Hi everybody, Lulan here. Today, we're talking about film cameras. Why we think that film cameras is the way to go for a lot of photographers and how that could actually improve your photography. So stay in tune and let's get going. So why have we switched to film cameras? Now this is a Leica M9. This is basically a digital rangefinder camera that produces sounds like this. That amazing film-like sound is something that brings us back to the old days. Now, this is not the only reason that people switch, from digital cameras to film cameras or rangefinder cameras. We think that nowadays, the digital cameras, the mirrorless especially, are so good that it can absolutely capture everything or anything that you wanted to capture. There's nearly nothing it cannot do. The fact that it's able to autofocus and have sharp images in 30 frames, 40 frames, 50 frames per second is ridiculous. You do not need to have that many photos. You really need to have really one or two good photos. But then obviously for sports photography, that is something that you want. But that is exactly why people are switching, and myself included, began to appreciate film cameras, began to appreciate all rangefinder cameras, because it allows you to sort of take a little bit of time to really evaluate yourself, evaluate the subject before you take a photo. And I think that is critical in today's world. Being able to have that second of thoughts, how to compose that shot, knowing that there could be a limitation in how many photos you can have, and having to have the extra thought before taking that shot sometimes produce a photo that are truly incredible. So how is it like to be using a rangefinder camera or a film camera professionally? So I would say that it's extremely difficult. I wouldn't recommend anybody to be doing this from the get-go because it's not user-friendly. I purchased a monochrome camera and that was a very difficult camera to use because you essentially limit yourself to black and white, and there is no color. Although there is a way which you can use AI to artificially bring the colors back, but that still brings the question of, why should I bring this camera to like a baby birthday party or anything else? Because it only photographs black and white. Similarly, rangefinder cameras does not actually focus automatically. So each shot that you photograph needs to be done manually. And that takes a lot of the work because essentially, you would expect majority of your photos are not really in focus unless you use a technique that uses extremely high aperture in order to capture them. But then, who does that really? Majority of people still want that beautiful in-focus shot with blurred background. That is why, rangefinder camera are actually really difficult to use. Now, let's take a step back and say, film cameras, especially very old film cameras, are even more difficult to use. So in addition to the inability that is unable to focus by itself, some of them also don't have any light meter in them, which begs the question, how the heck do you actually use them? Because without light meter, you basically would have to either purchase a light meter or you will have to somehow figure out what kind of settings and values that you want to set your cameras to be. In the very early days, I would use a digital camera as a light meter and I use a film camera to adapt those settings in order to actually be able to take those photos. Eventually, I began to learn how lighting will be read, but that is, again, a very difficult task to learn, especially if you're looking for something to capture quickly. Oftentimes, we're capturing things that are moving, things that are happening very quickly, And, as photographers, we wanted to capture those key moments. We don't want to wait until we figure out the aperture and the focus before the subject could have already been moved or things have already changed. So that is really difficult as a photographer to start with film photography or rangefinder photography. But that is exactly why people will love it. Now, can these film cameras or rangefinder cameras really improve your photography? Now, one thing you have to learn and you have to understand is that photography, like many other forms of mastery, require you to just basically shoot more and more and more. There isn't really a fast way to become better at what you do. The way it improves your photography is that it kind of expand on the level of tools and strategies that you can actually utilize to take a great photograph. So instead of being able to say, well, let's take a picture that of a subject, now you have the option of defocusing a photograph. Now you have the option of photographing them, in a different color, using a different film, using a black and white film, using a monochrome film, and also using an expired film if you feel like it. Now you can say that, Lulan, hey, we've had that option before as well. You are actually able to, throw in a filter and potentially achieve a very similar look. But you will never have that kind of satisfaction every time you photograph. There is a difference between being able to instantly achieve a look without actually doing any post-production work. It's almost like finishing a game without doing any cheats. So is it a good time to get into film photography? I think so. Yeah, there are lots of YouTubers are actually doing something, are introducing a lot of people to this type of photography, so you have a very good resource of information. There's also a huge amount of selection of cameras to look at. I would typically recommend to start with a rangefinder camera to really at least hone in the autofocus skills. Then maybe move on to a film camera that has light meters in them. And if you love a challenge, the next step would be a film camera without any light meter. The benefit to those cameras is that now you don't need a battery. It can be battery free. And it's amazing to use electronics that no longer use batteries because you don't have to worry about charging them. Then the last step will be using cameras that no longer even have a screen, like a field camera, large format cameras, or medium format cameras that have weird screens and old solutions, strange ways of taking photographs. These are things that are fun to just play around with, not necessarily great for, professional work. So that's it from me today. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.